Imagine a war. Picture charging knights, clashing steel and the thunder of hooves. Now imagine this war was fought over a wooden bucket. This wasn't a magical artifact or a jeweled chalice, but an ordinary bucket that sparked a conflict known as the War of the Bucket. This seemingly ridiculous event took place in 1325 AD between the Italian cities of Modena and Bologna. It's a story of rivalry, pride and absurdity, reminding us that even trivial objects can become catalysts for conflict. So buckle up as we delve into the world of warring Italian city-states, where a stolen bucket became the unlikely symbol of a generations-old feud. To understand the War of the Bucket, we need to journey back to 14th century Italy. Imagine a patchwork of independent city-states, each vying for dominance, wealth and influence. These cities, bustling centers of trade and culture, were also fiercely independent, their histories intertwined with rivalry and bloodshed. Adding fuel to the fire were the Guelphs and Ghibellines, two factions whose bitter rivalry had plagued Italy for centuries. Within this volatile setting, alliances shifted like desert sands, and any perceived weakness could be exploited by a rival city-state. Nestled in the heart of this turbulent landscape were Modena and Bologna, two cities with a history of animosity. Located in what is now the Emilia-Romagna region of northern Italy, these cities were fierce rivals locked in a constant struggle for supremacy. Modena, proud and defiant, had long chafed under the shadow of its larger, more powerful neighbor. Bologna, a center of learning and commerce, viewed Modena with a mix of disdain and suspicion. And as fate would have it, that spark came in the form of a stolen bucket. The seemingly insignificant object that would become the catalyst for war was a simple wooden bucket. Legend has it that a group of Bolognese soldiers snuck into Modena and made off with the bucket. Regardless of the motive, the theft of the bucket was a slap in the face to the people of Modena. The bucket became a symbol of Modena's honor, and its theft demanded a response. And so, with a stolen bucket as their unlikely battle cry, the two cities marched towards war. To truly grasp the absurdity of the War of the Bucket, we must first transport ourselves back to 14th century Italy. Imagine a fragmented landscape, a mosaic of independent city-states, each fiercely proud and hungry for power. These weren't sleepy medieval towns. They were vibrant hubs of commerce and culture. Each city-state, a kingdom unto itself, jealously guarded its independence and autonomy. This fierce independence bred a climate of constant competition and suspicion. Adding another layer of complexity was the conflict between the Guelphs and the Ghibellines. These two factions had become deeply entrenched across Italy, dividing families, cities, and entire regions. On one side stood the Guelphs, supporting the papacy. On the other side were the Ghibellines, aligned with the Holy Roman Emperor. This Guelph-Ghibelline conflict fueled countless wars, sieges, and assassinations. In the heart of this tumultuous landscape lay Modena, a city small in stature but large in spirit. Surrounded by more powerful neighbors, Modena clung fiercely to its independence. Modena boasted a strategic location on vital trade routes, making it a desirable prize. The Modenese were known for their martial spirit and deep distrust of outsiders. In the story of the War of the Bucket, they would demonstrate their unwavering determination. Just a stone's throw from Modena lay Bologna, a city that seemed to embody everything Modena was not. Large, wealthy, and cosmopolitan, Bologna was a renowned center of learning. Its citizens, proud of their city's cultural achievements, often viewed their Modenese neighbors with condescension. To them, Modena was a provincial backwater, a nuisance that needed to be kept in check. This sense of superiority blinded the Bolognese to the depth of resentment simmering within Modena. The rivalry between Modena and Bologna was fueled by a toxic cocktail of factors. Trade routes, jealously guarded and fiercely contested, were a constant source of tension. Both cities sought to control the flow of goods and wealth through the region. Modena, traditionally Ghibelline, found itself increasingly at odds with Bologna, a staunchly Guelph city. In such a climate, even the smallest spark could ignite a conflagration. In the grand tapestry of history, wars have been waged for empires, for gold, for religious dominance. But in the heart of Italy, a war was about to be fought over something far more mundane, a simple wooden bucket. This bucket would transcend its utilitarian purpose and become a potent symbol. For the Modenese, this bucket represented more than just a means to quench their thirst. It was a tangible symbol of their city's sovereignty, and its theft would cut deep into the city's pride. News of the stolen bucket spread through Modena like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of outrage. The citizens saw this act not as a mere prank, but as a deliberate insult. The theft was a violation of their territory, a symbolic act of aggression that could not go unanswered. The Modenese clamored for their leaders to take action to avenge this insult to their city's dignity. The stage was set for confrontation, the seeds of war sown in the fertile ground of injured pride. If the Modenese expected contrition from their Bolognese neighbours, they were sorely mistaken. News of the stolen bucket was met with amusement and derision in Bologna. The city's elite scoffed at the idea of returning such a trivial item. To the Bolognese, the bucket was nothing more than a bauble, a plaything in a game of power. They had poked the bear, and rather than back down, they seemed to relish the bear's roar. As days turned into weeks, the standoff between Modena and Bologna escalated. Diplomatic efforts proved fruitless, each side unwilling to back down. The stolen bucket had morphed into a dangerous symbol, a wedge driven between two already hostile neighbors. The word war began to be uttered with increasing frequency. The drums of war, though distant, had begun to beat, their rhythm echoing the escalating tension. With diplomacy failing and neither side willing to concede, the simmering tension finally boiled over. The stolen bucket had become the catalyst for a conflict that would see armies clash and blood spilled. Modena, fueled by righteous anger, assembled its forces. Bologna, initially dismissive of the threat, soon found itself facing a determined enemy. The War of the Bucket, absurd in its origins, was about to become a bloody reality. Modena prepares for war. The theft of the bucket had become a rallying cry in Modena. The city, known for its defiance, was not about to let this insult slide. The mood shifted from outrage to grim determination. Modena would have its bucket back, even if it meant going to war. The city's leaders began to mobilize their forces. Blacksmiths hammered day and night, sharpening swords and repairing armor. Farmers drilled with pitchforks and sharpened scythes. A ragtag army began to assemble outside Modena's walls. The stolen bucket had become a symbol of defiance, uniting the people of Modena. Section 2. A City Divided, Bologna's Internal Struggles. While Modena prepared for war, Bologna seemed to be gripped by a strange lethargy. The initial amusement at Modena's outrage had given way to a quiet unease. The ruling families of Bologna, accustomed to a life of luxury and intrigue, found themselves divided on how to handle the escalating situation. Some, still clinging to the belief that this was all an elaborate joke, dismissed Modena's military preparations as mere posturing. They argued against escalating the conflict, advocating for a diplomatic solution. Others, however, recognized the danger posed by a united and determined Modena. They argued for a show of force, believing that a swift and decisive strike would crush the rebellion before it could truly begin. Caught between these two factions, the city's leaders dithered, their indecision eroding valuable time. Meanwhile, Whispers of treason and betrayal spread through the city's back alleys. Some whispered that certain families, eager to profit from the chaos, were secretly aiding Modena, their allegiances as fluid as the waters of the Po River. Section 3, The Gathering Storm Alliances and Intrigue. The conflict between Modena and Bologna began to draw in other players on the Italian political chessboard. The Guelph-Ghibelline rivalry reared its ugly head once more. Modena, aligned with the Ghibellines, found support from other cities against Bologna's Guelph allegiances. Secret envoys were dispatched, alliances forged and broken in medieval diplomacy. Florence saw an opportunity to weaken Bologna and expand its influence. The Florentines pledged their support to Modena, funding the war effort. Even the papacy found itself drawn into the conflict. Pope John XXII saw an opportunity to assert his authority. Section 4, the war chest funding a bucket-fueled conflict. War, even one fought over a stolen bucket, is an expensive endeavor. Armies need to be fed, equipped and paid. Taxes were levied, loans secured, and fortunes liquidated. In Modena, citizens contributed to the war effort. Jewelers minted coins, noble women donated silks. Bologna, with greater wealth, seemed to have the upper hand. But internal divisions and disrupted trade routes cut into profits. The war began to hit Bologna where it hurt most, its pocketbook. Section 5, March to Zappolino. The die is cast. As the summer of 1325 wore on, the drums of war beat louder. Diplomacy had failed, alliances had been forged, and both Modena and Bologna were on a collision course. On November 15th, the Modenese army, led by Francesco Bonacolsi, marched to Zappolino. The stolen bucket held aloft on a pike was a constant reminder of the insult. The Bolognese assembled their forces, swelled by mercenaries and conscripts. Confident of victory, they marched out with banners displaying the Red Cross. The stage was set for the Battle of Zappolino, a clash over a stolen bucket. Under a crisp November sky, the fields surrounding Zappolino transformed into a stage for a drama of clashing steel and thundering hooves. The Modenese army, smaller but determined, stood ready to defend their city's honor. Across the battlefield, the Bolognese army presented a more imposing spectacle. Their banners, emblazoned with the Red Cross of Bologna, snapped in the wind. The air crackled with anticipation, the silence before the storm broken only by the snorting of horses and the rustling of banners. With a roar that seemed to shake the very heavens, the two armies surged forward, their lines colliding amidst a maelstrom of dust, blood, and the deafening clang of steel upon steel. The Bolognese knights, their lances lowered, smashed into the Modenese lines, seeking to break their ranks with brute force. Horses reared, their screams mingling with the cries of fallen men. The Modenese, though outnumbered, fought with the ferocity of cornered wolves, their desire for vengeance fueling their every blow. Foot soldiers, their ranks intermingled in a chaotic dance of death, thrust with spears, hacked with swords, and unleashed volleys of deadly crossbow bolts. The ground, churned by the hooves of charging horses and stained crimson with the blood of the fallen, became a treacherous mire. The air, thick with the stench of sweat, fear, and death, echoed with the clash of arms, the agonized cries of the wounded, and the triumphant roars of the victors. The battle raged, a chaotic symphony of violence, with neither side giving an inch. As the battle raged, the superior numbers of the Bolognese began to tell. The Modenese lines, though they fought with incredible tenacity, began to buckle under the relentless pressure. It seemed as though the weight of Bologna's might would soon crush the valiant but outnumbered defenders of Modena. But then, a stroke of luck, perhaps even divine intervention, shifted the tide of battle. A sudden downpour, transforming the battlefield into a muddy quagmire, hampered the movements of the heavier Bolognese cavalry. Seeing an opportunity, the Modenese commander, Francesco Bonacolsi, ordered a daring gambit. A contingent of his swiftest horsemen, skirting around the edge of the battlefield, launched a surprise attack on the Bolognese camp. The attack, unexpected and devastating in its ferocity, sowed panic and confusion amongst the Bolognese ranks. The sight of their camp ablaze, their supplies plundered, seemed to sap the morale of the Bolognese soldiers, their initial confidence giving way to uncertainty and fear. Section 4. Flight and Pursuit, the Bolognese Routed. The Modenese, sensing their enemies' wavering resolve, pressed their attack with renewed vigor. Their cries of "Per San Geminiano," for St. Geminianus, the patron saint of Modena, rang out across the battlefield, a testament to their faith and their determination. The tide of battle had turned, and the Bolognese, their ranks broken and their spirits crushed, began a chaotic retreat. What began as an orderly withdrawal soon dissolved into a rout as fear spread through the Bolognese ranks like wildfire. The Modenese, their bloodlust aroused, gave no quarter, pursuing their fleeing enemies with relentless fury. The Bolognese knights, their dreams of an easy victory shattered, spurred their mounts towards the safety of their city walls, leaving their foot soldiers to their fate. The road back to Bologna became a trail of discarded weapons, abandoned banners, and the bodies of fallen soldiers. The Battle of Zappolino, once a seemingly foregone conclusion, had ended in a stunning and humiliating defeat for the arrogant forces of Bologna. Section 5. Spoils of war, a bucket redeemed, a city humiliated. Flushed with victory, the Modenese army returned to their city in triumph, their banners waving proudly in the wind. Leading the procession, a symbol of their hard-won victory, was the stolen bucket, recovered from the chaos of the Bolognese camp. The bucket, once a humble household object, had been transformed into a revered relic, a tangible representation of Modena's courage and their triumph over their arrogant neighbors. For the Bolognese, the defeat at Zappolino was a bitter pill to swallow. Their pride, their arrogance, their belief in their own superiority had been shattered on the field of battle. The stolen bucket, once a source of amusement, had become a symbol of their humiliation, a constant reminder of their defeat at the hands of their smaller, more determined rivals. The war, sparked by a seemingly insignificant object, had ended in a decisive victory for Modena, cementing its independence and etching its name in the annals of history. Section 1. The Spoils of Victory. A bucket's return and a city's humiliation. The Modenese returned from Zappolino triumphant, their stolen bucket now a trophy of war. It was paraded through the streets, a testament to their victory over their neighbors. The citizens of Modena, their spirits soaring, cheered their returning heroes. The bucket, dented and scarred, symbolized their resilience and courage. In contrast, Bologna was silent and resentful. The streets were quiet, the shadow of defeat heavy in the air. Their army returned in disarray, banners trampled, a bitter pill to swallow. Section 2. A Fragile Peace, the Treaty of 1327. The resounding defeat at Zappolino forced Bologna to the negotiating table. 2 years after the war began, a treaty was signed, officially ending the hostilities. The terms of the treaty, dictated by the victors, were far from favorable to Bologna. They were forced to relinquish certain territorial claims, pay a hefty indemnity to Modena, and, perhaps most galling of all, formally acknowledge Modena's possession of the infamous bucket. The treaty, however, did little to heal the deep wounds that had been opened. Bologna, though forced to accept the terms of their defeat, never truly relinquished their claim to the bucket. The stolen vessel, kept under lock and key in Modena, became a source of ongoing tension between the two cities, a potent symbol of their rivalry and the unresolved animosity that simmered beneath the surface of their fragile peace. Section 3. Scars on the Landscape, the Long Shadow of Zappolino. While the War of the Bucket may seem like a minor footnote in the grand tapestry of history, its impact on the region was significant. The battle itself, though brief and relatively small in scale, left an indelible mark on the landscape and the psyche of the two warring cities. The fields surrounding Zappolino, once fertile and green, were scarred by trenches, littered with the debris of war and haunted by the ghosts of those who had fallen in the senseless conflict. More importantly, the war solidified Modena's independence and cemented its reputation for fierce resistance against its larger, more powerful neighbors. The victory at Zappolino became a source of immense civic pride, a defining moment in the city's history. The stolen bucket, a constant reminder of their triumph, took on an almost mythical status, enshrined in local folklore and celebrated in song and story. Section 4. A bucket's legacy, remembering a war fought for pride. Centuries have passed since the War of the Bucket, yet its memory endures, a testament to the enduring power of symbols and the absurdities of human conflict. The stolen bucket, still housed in Modena's City Hall, is no longer just a humble wooden vessel. It is a relic of a bygone era, a tangible link to a time when wars could be sparked by seemingly trivial matters. The War of the Bucket serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the smallest spark can ignite a conflagration when fueled by pride, resentment, and a lack of understanding. It is a story about the folly of war, the absurdity of conflict, and the enduring power of symbols to shape human behavior. It is a story that continues to fascinate and amuse, even as it reminds us of the importance of diplomacy, compromise, and the often overlooked value of simply returning a stolen bucket. The Bucket's Echo, Lessons in Absurdity. At first glance, the War of the Bucket seems like a historical anomaly, a tale spun for amusement rather than a serious historical event. A war fought over a simple wooden bucket? It sounds more like the plot of a Monty Python sketch than a chapter in Italian history. Yet, as we've explored, beneath the absurdity lies a complex tapestry of political intrigue, economic rivalry, and the enduring power of symbols. The bucket, insignificant in itself, became a focal point for existing tensions, a tangible representation of the deep-seated animosity between two proud cities. The war's absurdity, however, offers a valuable lesson. It serves as a stark reminder that conflicts often arise not from rational calculations of gain and loss, but from a potent cocktail of pride, resentment, and a failure to communicate. The Bolognese, blinded by their arrogance, failed to grasp the depth of feeling the stolen bucket evoked in their Modenese neighbors. The Modenese, their pride wounded, allowed a seemingly insignificant act to escalate into a bloody conflict. Beyond the bucket, the human face of conflict. While the War of the Bucket may seem like a distant and rather bizarre event, it holds a mirror to contemporary conflicts. Strip away the medieval trappings, the clashing steel and the cries of battle, and we are left with a timeless story of human nature. The same forces that drove the Modenese and Bolognese to war, pride, resentment, the desire for power and recognition, continue to shape our world today. From border disputes to political rivalries, the seeds of conflict are often sown in the fertile ground of misunderstanding and a failure to empathize with those we perceive as different. The War of the Bucket, in its own strange way, reminds us of the importance of communication, of bridging divides, and of recognizing the common humanity that binds us, even in the midst of disagreement. A war for the history books, the enduring allure of the bucket. The War of the Bucket, despite its seemingly trivial nature, has secured a unique place in the annals of history. It serves as a reminder that history is not just a dry recitation of dates and battles. It is a tapestry woven from the threads of human experience in all its complexity and absurdity. Perhaps it is the very absurdity of the war that makes it so enduringly fascinating. In a world often defined by grand narratives and epic struggles, the story of a war fought over a stolen bucket offers a refreshing dose of humor and a reminder that even the most seemingly insignificant events can have far-reaching consequences. Echoes of Zappolino the bucket in modern Modena. Today, centuries after the last arrow flew at Zappolino, The War of the Bucket continues to resonate in Modena. The stolen bucket, carefully preserved and displayed in the city hall, is a source of local pride, a tangible link to a defining moment in Modena's history. Every year the city commemorates the anniversary of the Battle of Zappolino with a festival, a light-hearted celebration that includes reenactments of the battle, parades, and of course plenty of food and drink. The War of the Bucket, once a source of division and bloodshed, has been transformed into a unifying symbol of Modena's identity, a reminder of their ancestors' courage and their city's enduring spirit. It is a testament to the enduring power of history and the strange and wonderful ways in which even the most absurd events can shape the identity of a city and its people.